Namaskar. Welcome to yet another episode of IPN's, I would say, I wouldn't call it a masterclass, but a resource and a resource pool of getting various ideas of best practices, of interesting things that educationists all around our country are doing it. So it is, I think I would call it a great initiative of IPN to call on board such individuals who can add value to not only seasoned educators or leaders in the industry, in the school arena, but also for anybody who wants to know more, who's a fresher in this field, who wants to add on value to his or her school. So with this, I would like to invite our keynote speaker for the evening, that is Dr. Chandra DP. If I may just read out his fabulous little brief that I've been given, you would know what an interesting personality he is. Mr. Shekhar has over 16 years of experience in the education space and services as the CEO of Jain Group of Institutions. He is Rex Karamveer Global Education Change Champions Fellow and was ranked 7th in Education World's ranking of 33 young rising stars of Indian education in March the past year. Dr. Chandrasekhar has served as the chair of CII Young Indians, the Hyderabad chapter, and for the 3 consecutive terms, he was on the National Governing Council of CII Young Indians for thought leaders. A TEDx speaker and a president's distinguished district director of Toastmasters International. He is also the co-founder of Sumadhu Trust, envisioning a rabies-free India. Dr. Chandrasekhar is an alumnus of IIM Lucknow and has represented India at the International Visitor Leadership Program and he's a man on a mission to impact 1 million children through his work and wants to leverage his experience in the education sector to build a better school system in our country. With this, I welcome you, Dr. Chandrasekhar, on our IPN platform, and we all are looking forward to your inputs and your insights on what the top 10 priorities for 2022 could be for all educators in the school arena. Now, before we start, Dr. Chandrasekhar, if I may request you that if you could just kind of give us a little insight into, before you begin your presentation, if you could just give us a little insight into how did you foray into this school education and what made you come in and how are you so passionate about making that impact that you talk about? Over to you, Mr. Chandrasekhar.
Well, thank you so much, and good evening to all of you, in particular to Ms. Supriti, who is my moderator for this session and also for the question, and also to all the other fellow educators who have tuned in from across the country today. Let me get started with answering the question you asked just now. My foray into education, more so into higher education, was way back in 2003, where I was involved in establishing the private university for my group, the JGI group, the Jain Group of Institutions. We were setting up a private university at Chhattisgarh, Raipur, and that is how I entered education. And till then, I was a fresher business management graduate and had some plans to get into the corporate sector and all that. So that's how I entered education. But more so, to answer the question of how and why school education, well, it was there when I was handling the university affairs. I also happened to do some kind of teaching to the chartered accountancy students, the freshers in the CA students. Now, when I was handling the class, and you can imagine how these classes are in colleges, every single day I used to enter the classroom only with hope, and I used to exit with regret, because whenever I used to go into the class and try to bring in some kind of an realization, I could see that students were not very excited or interested about it. That is what made me ask this question as to, when I'm putting in the effort, but the desired result, as a management student, it's all about process for us in our mind, the input and output. I'm like, when I'm putting in some amount of input and I'm not getting the desired output, Either there is something wrong in the input or there is something wrong in the output. That's what actually made me realize that that was not the age for students to enjoy the other things which I was giving them in addition to my lectures. I was talking to them about values, I was talking to them about citizenship, I was talking to them about how they can build a nation. Then I understood that you got to catch them young. You got to go down to maybe schools, and especially in that nascent, impressionable age, if you can bring in that mindset, that awareness, and that realization, the impact might be better. And I did try. I experimented by walking into a few schools nearby as a volunteer. And that's when I understood that this is the output I was looking for. And it took me 2 years, that is 2005, 2006. And then from then on, I said, this is it. And this is the game I want to play in my life as far as building the nation. So that's how I actually entered into school education. And ever since, I have not looked back. And I'm very, very happy and excited. And I can say now, I enter the classrooms with hope and come out with a lot of energy and joy.
Great, lovely to hear that. So I kind of heard you say that you were keen on catching them young, and that's how you spent about a couple of years into the classrooms as well. So keeping that in mind, if you could now share your top priorities, considering that we've already been shut down for almost close to 18 months, or let's say 2 years now,
Yeah.
how would you prioritize things? And especially when you say catching them young, knowing that the schools still haven't opened yet. So how do you propose that you would cite your top 10 priorities for 2020?
Absolutely. I mean, it's an honor and it's a privilege to be here and to share these things from my perspective. And I've always admired Gaurava and the work he does through the Indian Principles Network, because I am a strong proponent of the fact that you got to democratize leadership in schools, or in, for that matter, even in the country. We claim to be a very vibrant democracy, but leadership needs to be democratic. And I think IPN in that context is doing a phenomenal job in giving the forum and the platform to all educators. And I mean, I can see that principals and school leaders from across are so passionately involved in taking this movement forward. And I think that itself is a great proof of democratizing the leadership philosophy. And to add my 2 cents to this particular forum, it's indeed an honor. And I really want to thank IPN for giving me this opportunity at the outset. Now, moving forward, the way I would like to kind of outline my talk for the next 45 minutes to maybe an hour is I will raise or pull out pointers as far as the top 10 priorities for school leaders are concerned. And I'm very happy to have Ms. Supriti here, who's going to kind of add in her inputs and insights, and also maybe raise some queries in case I need to dwell a little deeper into that. But at the same time, I also want to make a request to all the participants as to, when I am sharing my perspectives, do feel free to put in your perspectives in the chat window so that we all can learn from each other. Not necessary that these 10 priorities are casted in iron. It is not that. It is fluid, and we need to evolve as we go forward. So with that, I will start off with the first priority. I don't have a presentation or so. The reason is I believe in connect, I believe in eye contact, I believe in conversations, and I want to keep that way. So the first priority for me, before even I spell it out in black and white, is let's look at the reality around us. We are now understanding that we are now into the new normal. As Supriti madam said, that it's almost 2 academic cycles that we are away from the physical brick and mortar schools, which means you have new challenges and new bridges to cross. What am I meaning here is, look at the students, your learners. They're coming from online to offline, and blended or hybrid to the physical classroom. So that is one. Second reality around us is your teachers. They have kind of donned the super power hat, whether it is a Wonder Woman or a Superman, in terms of handling everything online, and they are trying to connect with parents, with schools, with leaders, and as well as their learners. Now, with this, I introduce the first priority for us as educators, and that is our two dear friends. One, Abraham Maslow and Benjamin Bloom. I will say for this year, 2022, Maslow will take the priority and Bloom will now be on the back burner. So Maslow first, Bloom next. That's the mantra for this year, 2022. Now, let me explain this. We all know about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we talk about the safety needs and the fundamentals and other things, and we go up the ladder. So I'm not here to explain you the model. And I also know that you're all more aware than me as far as the Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy in understanding, from understanding to synthesis. I'm not even getting into the knowledge level, right? Now, when you look at this, we need to understand that Maslow has to be given priority because children, learners, and even our own colleagues and teachers are all coming from an emotional outburst. There are many reasons why there are pent up emotions. If you agree with me, please put in a yes in the chat column because I feel that there is a dialogue going on, right? So when these emotions are high and running, as leaders, we need to have that patience to understand, to listen, to empathize, and then to perform. Now, where are these emotions coming from? They're coming from lack of fulfillment of the safety needs. I mean, go back 1.5 years, 2 years, when lockdown was suddenly announced, when pandemic was, rising. We all didn't understand what to do. We were all frustrated as to what is happening around us, why this, and what's going to be the future. So much of uncertainty, so much of volatility. Now, that led us to almost a roller coaster ride of learning, unlearning, relearning on a daily basis because news were changing. The way we did our job, our work was changing. The guidelines and the instructions from the government, from the school leaders, or even from the management was changing. And we were adapting, adapting, and adapting. Now, all this through safety out of the window, through security out of the window. We were all not sure if we will survive the second wave, the third wave. For whatever reason, there was anxiety getting built up. Now, when as adults, as people who were providing direction, if we went through all that, can you spare a thought for people like your students in the classroom? Can you spare a thought for people who are less informed and less capable or less powerful in context of your own school, where they look for direction, they look for leadership? Now, today, when things are getting back to normalcy, I think the priority will be to bring in that security, to bring in that hygiene factors, to bring in that emotional connect and bond where we need to bring in that togetherness, and we are once again getting united and we are in this together. So I think that is the first priority, and that's where I talk about Maslow first and Bloom next. That's the priority number one. Of course, we also have to keep in mind the socio-emotional learning. Enough and more has been said from the CBSE to all the other boards to even all the sahodayas in the city and in the states where people talk about socio-emotional learning. But I want to raise a flag here. Let us not mistake socio-emotional learning to be one-off webinars or a workshop which we conduct and say that, okay, we did our bit for socio-emotional learning. That's not socio-emotional learning. Socio-emotional learning is much more than what we can put it in words. It is the connect, it is the personal touch, it is that the time and patience we spend with each other to understand, to empathize, to care, and also to tell loud and clearly that we are available, we are there for each other, be it for your student, be it for your parent, be it for your colleague, be it for your own teachers. So I think that is where we bring in. So in simple words, this becomes the priority number one, and time has now changed. Earlier, that is before COVID hit us, we were all victims of FOMO, what we know as fear of missing out. But today it is FOBA, which is fear of being alone. Technology has bridged the gap, but it has also taken us away where we are all somewhere feeling lonely. So that is why we need to bring in that socio-emotional connect and take it forward. So that's my priority number one. Moving to priority number two, we all as leaders, as school leaders, we need to push for efficiency in the new normal. Now, let me spend a little bit on what is the new normal. Things the way it used to work in pre-COVID times, where we used to call for staff meetings, we used to have regular interactions, we used to go around campus tours, we used to meet and greet people more often than what we could imagine. And it was all easy because all of us were under the same roof. You just walk a couple of steps and catch up with somebody or get them into your room and have a face-to-face conversation. The technology played a role, but it was only a supplement then. Today, technology has come to the mainstream. Now, of course, it has brought in a lot of leverage. It has brought in a lot of added advantage. But at the same time, we still are figuring out how to push in for efficiency in the new normal. And that is becoming the second priority. Let us push for efficiency in the new normal. Now, what do I mean by pushing for efficiency? Let me take a few examples and then look for it. More and more, we will be experiencing remote workplaces. These things were heard of in the corporate sector, but today it has come into the education sector. Your Hindi teacher, your mathematics teacher, your admin operations guy, or the person who takes care of finance, not necessarily be in the same school as you operate in the new normal, which means you got to bring in some kind of commitment, some kind of discipline, some kind of accountability, and more importantly, unity of vision. And that is where efficiency comes into play. And I'm sure all of us are facing this, where we may have to operate schools at half our capacities, but the systems and the processes with which we run the school cannot get into half its efficiency. We need to achieve full efficiency with half capacity. That is where we need to push for efficiency. So remote workplaces, flexible working hours, scattered teams are going to be the new normal. Now, are we prepared for it? How are we going to make that happen? And what are the new things which we can look at in our own system? Because I believe if we have 2,500 schools in a particular city or 4,000 schools in a particular city, no school is same. They may be similar, no school is same, which means every school is different. So what works for me may not necessarily work for you, which means we need to figure out our own ways of getting efficient. So pushing for efficiency in the new normal is priority number 2. Then add to it hybrid and blended models. Hybrid and blended models and the informal learning tools which are available. Now, different teachers, different academic professionals can subscribe to different tools. Now, how do you bring in a level of efficiency in all this? It's okay as a school, like for example, if I talk about my school, we have subscribed to Google Classrooms as our to go mode of engagement with our students. Now, even in Google Classroom, there are these add-on apps which teachers can subscribe to bring in a lot of excitement and engagement in their classes. How do you look at efficiency there? As a leader, you need to look at how can I push for efficiency? Now, what happens when you are pushing for efficiency? You need to define your objective. You need to define the end goal. And that is where we need to spend our time in this particular year, 2022, as to we define the common minimum objectives. And we say, irrespective of whichever app or platform you might subscribe to, but we all have to get to those objectives in our respective subjects or languages. I think that becomes priority number 2. In fact, I've spoken a little bit in length about this on my other talks and forums. I want to ask you this question, and I want you people to answer this. In your words, in your own way, what you think is the fundamental attribute of an excellent online teacher? What is that one thing or 2 things which you think are a must for an excellent online teacher? So go ahead. I can pause here for a while and you can show your answers on the chat. It will help us and we can kind of take a look at what the house feels about what are those fundamental things for an excellent online teacher. Yeah, student connect, student engagement, to be able to connect and have patience, to be a good orator, to keep. So look at these answers. Okay, there's no one right answer or there is no wrong answer here, but look at the variety, the diversity of answers. This is exactly what I'm trying to tell you, that when you are having teachers and they perceive to be an excellent online teacher, the way you are perceiving is using tech tools or being patient or being a good orator, how will you push for efficiency when so many variables are there? Now, if you say, I feel good technology adept is a good online teacher, then the other teacher who's not using so many tools but able to engage with the students will feel that he's inefficient. So, designing and defining these things becomes the priority. Thank you so much for participating. I want to stop here. I've shared two priorities right now, but I want to go back to Ms. Supriti. All good so far? You have any questions for me, ma'am?
I was yearning to kind of interrupt you, but then you were in such a flow that I thought I'll just let you and I'll find my pause moment and kind of just I would I think when you started with your first priority, Maslow before Bloom, it got a smile on my face because this is something that even I have been saying so, not just because of the pandemic. I mean, I've been saying it forever. You can't bloom unless you have your Maslow's right. Simple as that. So, and I'm a visual learner. So when I train my teachers in my school, I really do it. You get your Maslow right before you bloom. So you literally have that action of blooming. Your children are going to bloom. You yourself as a teacher, as a mentor will bloom if you get your Maslow concepts right. If you create that safe and comforting environment for your child to be absolutely engaging and absolutely free with you. So, having said that, a beautiful first top priority. Secondly, when you mentioned, and you gave a beautiful example when you asked the question, who, according to you, would be a good online teacher. So, I would say you brought across a very good, let's say, point to ponder upon for a lot of people at the helm of their affairs, school leaders, teachers for that matter. And if you don't draw up, I would say, I wouldn't say a policy, but some kind of a benchmarking document for your school. It should have happened last year itself, so that the year gone by, you could have kind of worked on it, and the third year would have been absolutely free flowing and smooth. So yes, having your benchmarking statements in place, the expectations in place for a new normal that is going to be with us for good now. So if people think that the pandemic is over and we'll go back to our normal self, no, the virus is still going to stay in the world. Our teachers will fall sick, our children will fall sick, their families members will fall sick, and they would expect us to go hybrid in supporting their child, or the teacher would want to teach from home while she is recuperating or she is supporting sick members at home. So I think schools should be open to it, and those schools who aren't preparing for it, I think they will be in a bigger problem because everybody around them would be going in for it. I have, honestly speaking, I have not only from my leave policy, in which I have incorporated 5 to 10 days of online at home at teacher discretion, keeping this in mind that there would be times when they would be quarantined because of the neighbor, or they would be quarantined because of their own family. So instead of whatever the CL or the EL is, let them have this at their discretion when they want to go online with prior information to us. So that document is ready. We've been following that. Apart from that, we are also putting together a lot of benchmarking statements in place, which basically is a guided document for teachers to know what are the expectations of all stakeholders in school. Because there will be parents or fathers working from a different place, wanting their families to be together. The child will not be able to take a complete offline solution. Once we are open, then what do we do as a school? So I think you set course, something in motion, which a lot of people watching us live and otherwise should take into cognizance and create their own document. So wonderful to top priorities. I actually like it a lot, and I'm making my own notes, and I'm assuming others are doing so. So let's move on to what you have to say with your next line of priorities.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad that we are on the same page as far as the first priority is concerned, and I cannot agree more on that. Uh, Moving on to priority number three, and this is my favorite priority: sports and physical education. Now, we all know what schools are when children are in the playground. Today, when we walk the corridors of our schools, we feel somewhere pained. Why? Because we don't see life in the school. We see buildings, we see facilities, we see furniture, but we don't see life. And that's from the selfish point of view, that you want to see life around you. And what better than the energy, the laughter, and all that tantrums of the children in your playground, in your corridor, in your campuses. Now, that's from my perspective, your perspective as an individual. But look at it from the broader sense. The last 2 years have told one thing loud and clear, that education will not stop even though the campuses are shut, which means we connect online and we kind of get on with completing syllabus or conducting examinations or all the other academic calendar activities. But from the student's point of view, let's think from their point of view. If all of that can be completed, then why do they even need schools? Why do they need schools? Yes, you may say socializing, but today socializing is happening on social media platforms. Now, how much right or wrong it is something which we can debate. But then for a person who is born with Facebook and Twitter, that is their group study hour or their chat or whatever it is. Now, the point here is schools are that place where children can discover their innate abilities, which is outside of the textbook. And I think the priority number three for this year is to get students involved more and more with physical education and sports. Now, we can argue and debate upon the other aspects of what sedentary lifestyle has brought into our children, how children are getting lifestyle related issues just because there is no enough physical movement. In fact, where I live from in Hyderabad, Pulela Gopichand, the Indian national badminton coach, is very vocal about physical literacy, that no matter what sport you take up, you just go and spend 45 minutes to 2 hours outside, outdoor, and have some kind of a physical activity. So I think priority number three for school leaders would be to focus on sports and physical education. That's my third priority. Sports and physical education also bring us to another interesting thing, and that's my fourth priority, which is design thinking. Today, we talk of 21st century skills. We talk of problem solving, we talk of collaboration, we talk of communication, we talk of a lot of things. For everything, we have to understand that we need to think by design and not by default. And that can happen only when we bring in that awareness in our schools among all our stakeholders. So priority number four for a school leader is to bring in the design thinking approach for all our activities and processes. Now, if I have to give you an example, what is design thinking? Design thinking is a powerful approach towards problem solving, but it involves these fundamental things. Number one, it involves focus. Number two, it involves attention. Number three, it involves understanding. Number four, it involves insight. And lastly, it involves pursuit of excellence. Now, look at these five words: focus, attention, understanding, insight, and pursuit for excellence. Focus, we know how distracted the world we are in. Understanding, you know the issues with communication gaps. Insight, you know perspectives matter, and those perspectives are your aha moments to solve complex problems with simple solutions. Right now, these are the things can be brought together using design thinking. We call it focus groups, we call it a parent participation, we call it stakeholder satisfaction, but design thinking is the word which we need to take it for all our activities, at least in this year, because the one thing which pandemic has created for all of us is everything has a say when it comes to education. Parents feel that they are more involved as a child's partner in the progress than they were before, because they sat their children next to them with the laptops or tablets on and made them complete the homework. Teachers feel they are now more contributing to the child's progress because they are available at 11 o'clock in the night, where earlier they used to end their classes at 5 or 5:30, and then they were only meeting them next morning. So suddenly the society is taking interest in the child's progress, which also means we need to channelize their thinking towards common objectives, and design thinking can be your tool to bring them together towards common objective. So that is priority number 4. Priority number 5 is learning levels and filling learning gaps. As teachers, as academicians, we all know that 6 months of learning loss is equivalent to 3 years of learning, because the two things which gets added here is, one, there is no regular learning, so it creates a loss. But what gets added is forgotten learning. It's like swimming. If you are stagnant, you don't stay where you are, you drown. So that's what is happening with our learning levels. When children are at one point in time and then there is no learning happening, or there is a loss of learning, they are not just stagnated, they are sinking. And I think the priority here is to bring in remedial, to bring in maybe calibrated classrooms where children are kind of tweaked and given them some kind of refresher programs, bridge courses, remedial classes, where we can catch up with the learning loss as well as improve learning levels among the school. So I think these are the third, fourth, and fifth priorities in my list of 10 priorities for school leaders. Let me again go back to Madam Supriti and see what she has to add.
So I think I'm really liking the flow that you're going with, and it's very cohesive when you look at it. And I'm looking at from the perspective of somebody who is struggling to manage the school scenario in the current scenario. Because in the chat box also I saw somebody write that children in the rural area suffer. So not just rural, even in the urban areas we do have many issues which actually have been promoting what I would call as a learning loss or a learning gap. So keeping all of these scenarios in mind, I think the flow with which you are citing your priorities is going down very well as for somebody who would want to take value out of it. I think it's phenomenal that the way you outlined it beautifully with the examples. I'm sure our audience is finding it as interesting as I am. And I really like your idea about the fifth priority that you shared about remedials, which are not remedial as in the sense that we know of, but more of bridge courses, or kind of giving them that extra push that they require because of the situation that we are in. So brilliant so far, so good.
Thank you so much. Well, I will talk about the point which was raised in the chat window about the learning gap when it comes to rural and urban, and that's going to be my priority number 9. But till there, I will get on with priority number 6. Priority number 6 is something which I keep telling in my school and in my organization, and this is very simple. Although it might rhyme, it means a lot. Inspect what you expect. This is a priority for all the leaders. This is a priority for all the teachers, because I believe teachers are leaders in their own right inside the classroom. Inspect what you expect. You know, the one thing which pandemic has taught all of us is data backed decision making is the order of the day, is the need of the hour. And when you are involved in data backed decision making, you got to look at or develop a liking towards looking at the numbers, looking at data, looking at facts. That also means we got to keep feelings aside when we are deciding. This I'm stressing a little because normally the way we are tuned to taking decisions or making decisions in our organizations, especially in schools, is we get swayed by feelings. But now, priority should be on data backed decision making. That's why I say inspect what you expect. If you are expecting your teachers to turn up every single day and conduct that 40 minutes of interaction in a meaningful way, you got to spend 5 to 10 minutes or 15 minutes of your day in inspecting the teacher attendance online or offline. You got to understand that monitoring mechanisms and checks and balances are extremely crucial for end result. In fact, in management philosophy, we keep talking about it. Don't manage your goals, manage your habits. Your goals will be taken care of automatically. If you wake up one day, like what we do, December, we say, oh, New Year resolutions, we could not achieve them. It's okay, let's scrap, buy a new book and write a new resolution. And January, we are all excited. But what happens in February? What happens in March? What happens in July? What happens every single day of your life adds towards making that goal a reality. And this is something which is very common, and we all understand that. So, what we need to do is like how we say, manage your habits, your goals will be taken care of. Inspect what you expect. Don't wait for that report to show red and then start wondering what went wrong. Look at the fundamental unit which contributes to that report and see if you're spending your time on monitoring that particular unit, that particular input. And I think that is where we need to make that change in our mindset in terms of inspecting what you expect. So data backed decision making is very, very important. Then please remember, wherever your focus goes, your energy will flow. If you're focusing on making your children extremely intelligent when it comes to scoring marks, your energy will flow there, and your team will also channelize their energy there. If you're so, as a leader, you got to set those broad goals and then divide or distribute your energy, if not equally, at least in a great proportion, so that your team gets the message that these are the founding pillars for this particular academic cycle as far as our school is concerned. And I think that is where communication plays an important role as to I need to set the agenda and I need to repeat. One other thing which I want to tell you, although it may not be the main point, but it is an additional point to this particular priority, is repeat yourself quite often. Repeat yourself as much as possible when it comes to your objectives and priorities, because as much as you repeat, that much it gets percolated down the ladder. We need people to keep listening to those important things to keep the main thing the main thing. And leaders, we get bored. Oh, I've already said it, I've already spoken about it, and I can't keep repeating. What will they think about me that I don't have anything new to say? You don't need anything new to say when you know that this is the only thing you want to achieve. So I think that is where I come from when I say inspect what you expect. So that's the priority number 6. Priority number 7 is, this is the change which pandemic has brought in, and we got to be prepared for it, and in fact we got to get ahead of it, which is retailing of knowledge delivery. I know if I take a poll here, I think there are around 60 people or 70 people now or 80 people, and if I ask how many of us are happy with different edtech services which are offered in the market, and I know the answers because I've been doing this for the last 2 years, and I know the answers where people love to hate these edtech providers. Why? Because they have brought in that commercial angle to all those video lessons and classes, and I don't want to name anybody here, but when we think that they have lost the personal touch, they are making money out of commoditizing education and knowledge delivery. But sadly, friends, in the last 2 years, if there is one sector which has made more money than many of the other sectors put together, is edtech, which means retailing of knowledge delivery has already taken place. As a school, are we thinking of doing that? I'm not asking you to monetize, but I'm asking you to create an LMS. What is LMS? Learning Management Solution. Are you able to create your own MOOCs, which is massive open online course? Are you able to add value to the CBSE database of MOOCs? And for all of you who did not know, each one of us can create a course and put it on the national depository free of cost. You don't have to pay anything. You just have to give your time, and any student anywhere can connect. Any teacher from anywhere can learn from your concepts. In fact, as I'm talking, my team of educators are doing this with in association with Mr. Pushkar Ora, the joint director, CBSE Sports, and I think academics and sports. He's taking care as a sports person also. So we are working on integrating sports to the curriculum. So you can work on integrating something else to the curriculum. You can come up with your own way of teaching a particular subject or a language and put that out as a course. So retailing of knowledge delivery is going to happen. Now, we need to take that as a priority. So common professional development, on-the-job training, in-house training, all that is fine. But these things are going to take place more and more. So we need to try to create those online learning management systems. As a school leader, my priority is, at least for this year 2022, to spend 10% of my teachers' time in the calendar year in creating these modular sessions. And there are advantages of it. I don't have to go about talking about it, but it's very obvious. You bring in the best practices and record a video lecture and keep them. That is there forever till you update the next version. Or we have something called as a common repository of resources, where all the TLMs, teaching learning materials, can be loaded onto a drive or onto a cloud, and people can access it wherever, whenever, however they want. And as a school, I think time has come for us to put together all those things. And that's why I say seventh priority is retailing of knowledge delivery. Retailing may not mean I'm charging. Retailing will be individual has the ability to access, and on demand, I can learn from your lectures or from your insights. So that's the context in which I use the word retailing. Now, priority number 8. Priority number 8 is your favorite. The question, the real question: how much is too much when it comes to screen time? We have asked this question a lot. In fact, I remember a series of webinars in September to December 2020, not 21, 20, when people were questioning, debating, arguing, and fighting as to screen time is the new evil in town. Now, suddenly, hybrid learning, blended learning, all of them have taken over the debate. What happened to screen time? What happened to all those discussions and deliberations? Does it mean that we are no longer watching the screens? Or does it mean that we have figured out a way to handle the screen? So I think as school leaders, we need to set clear-cut policies in answering the question. And that's the priority number 8. How much of screen time is too much? And then the advantage we have is we have other diversions, other distractions, maybe practical project-based learning, maybe field trips, maybe taking them out for a nature trek or walking in the park or circle time or making them do some other activity away from the screen. All of that can happen. And don't think it can only happen when children are inside your school. You can actually come out with creative ways of making them do when they're outside the school. Look at the national education policy. They say Wednesdays, one day in a week, make them go out and spend time with an artisan or a craftsman or a factory worker or somewhere. Now that's away from screen time. But then are you blending all of that into the policy? Are you bringing that and taking into account? Because you have to answer the question, how much of screen time is too much? And that becomes your priority. You might have dodged the question for the last 2 years, but I think this year we have to define that. And that's going to be one of the priorities. And that's my priority number 8 in answering the question, how much time of screen time is too much? Well, I'll save the next 2 priorities after this, where I will request Ms. Supriti to come in now and then kind of put her points on the last 3 priorities.
Great. I think it's been lovely listening to you. So I have made a little short notes of. So I really like your 6th priority when you mentioned inspect what you expect. You've put it in a beautifully rhyming way. How if I have to put it in another words, for people to very simply understand, it is a way of following up, giving feedback, reflection, and then action. So if one is following this cycle, following up is what you call as inspection over the expectation, which has been the action that you want to do in your classroom or as a whole school. So it's a cycle that I also very strongly believe in, and now even more so because, as you very rightly said right in the beginning, that it's not the same anymore when you could just walk into any of the resource rooms or classrooms, or maybe the hallways, speak to the teacher, give in a little, let's say, have a little chat over how her day has been and give a little feedback, or talk to children. Now that you don't have it, you have to be completely data driven. As you said, you have to look at your numbers, you have to look at the tasks that have been assigned, follow it up, bring it to their notice via feedbacks, and set the, let's say, team on a reflection mode, because I feel instead of the leader saying what is to be done, it is best when it's a team driven reflective action for a follow up that you are doing. So I totally believe in democratic leadership. So I was happy to hear you say that. Coming to the retailing of knowledge delivery, it's something new for me, how you put it across. And I do agree that it helps when you have a repository of learning materials. As I said, if a school was smart, they should have caught on in the first year itself. And whatever was researched, curated, the videos, the audios, the worksheets that you created on Google Forms, if all of that is curated well, all you had to do this past year was add more to it, make it even more interactive, more engaging. And those who still haven't done it, I think it's high time people did their own, and especially on their own LMSs. If they don't, you don't, if one is not able to create their own, then there are many channels, many let's say organizations which offer you for free. So one of those one of such organization is Engage with Science. It's an initiative by Ministry of Science and Technology, and our school is was one of the 20 members about 2 years ago, before the pandemic. We were part of it. And all the educators do is they record their best lessons, a 20-minute to 30-minute lesson, and they put it, once it is selected by a team of specialists, it is put by on their YouTube channel and the DD channel by the Engage with Science. So those who are not aware of it, please go find it out. Engage with Science is the name of the channel. It's a free initiative by Government of India. It's a beautiful channel, but it basically is to promote sciences. You do have other such channels as well. So I think those who haven't made their own, at least start curating information, curating videos and podcasts from there. And coming to your final, how much, very interesting question. Uh, at one point, it was controversial, but I think at this point, everybody has given up on that, and nobody, not the parent, not the educator, nobody is talking about the screen time. I, however, who's already a specky, I'm very mindful of how much is screen time is good time. So if I am mindful about myself, I'm definitely more mindful about the little ones. So we've designed the timetable in such a manner that after every 2 solid periods, there is a period in which you don't need to switch on your screen. It'll be an activity period where just the directions by the teacher is good enough. So it could be a dance, Zumba, aerobic, or art and craft instruction, where you just follow it up and you do it. So it kind of gives you a respite from this looking at the screen. You could be moving around the screen and doing your task. You could be on the floor. The child could be on the floor and doing the task. And here I would like to share a little best practice, I would say, although I wouldn't say we are doing it all in all. However, we are on a roll, we have started. Few of our teachers have started their own channels, and not just YouTube channels, but also podcasting channels. So I really like the idea of podcasting channels, because when you're doing a flipped classroom, then you don't have to give them a video to look at or go through. You could just give them a podcast, which could be recorded in your own voice, where you give an explanation, or you kind of pose questions which lead the children to think and learn on their own or explore on their own. So this is one thing which we are exploring more into, and more of my teachers are going into creating their own podcasts so that we can use it as a repository for how things are going to be in future. And I'm sure it will remain hybrid for quite some time to come. So we might as well bring along such resources or create such a data bank of knowledge and information. So fantastic so far, Dr. Chandrasekhar. And as I said, I'm making my notes and I'm going to kind of elaborate it further down for my own, let's say, learning diary. And I'm assuming that the others are doing as well the same. So let's move on to your ninth, which you've already given a hint of what is going to be. And I look forward to your 10th top priority as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, as I said, the ninth one is something which I want to draw the attention of the comment on the chat window, which talk about the divide between the digital divide between the rural and the urban. I think this year, the priority for all school leaders, irrespective of which part of the country are you from, or for that matter, even across the world, is mitigating the massive effect. What is the massive effect? Let me talk about it. In simple words, in common words, massive effect is nothing but the richer gets rich, the poorer gets poor. In the context of technology, in the context of school education, what is mitigating the massive effect is this. Those who are most able to benefit from the introduction of technology are indeed the ones who actually benefit the most. So that means when technology was introduced, the way it was introduced when the pandemic came, look at all the people who had access to devices, who had access to internet, who had access to some kind of an understanding of how these technological devices work. They benefited the most. In fact, the schools who were able to bring in online learning are the schools who enjoyed that kind of prosperity much before pandemic. Because I could hear a lot of people saying, we were already doing our online classes for students who were coming from different parts of the city to avoid their distance. I remember in Hyderabad, there was a bus strike the year before pandemic, where almost 45 days, the schools were not working because the government forced to shut down. In Delhi, there was some farmer strike and other things, or that some other disturbance which caused the national capital, where schools were forced to shut, and they resorted into online education for a small period of time. And those were the schools who kind of caught the wave much earlier when it comes to your LMS or your digital learning and all that. That's the massive effect, where people who are already aware, who have an advantage, gets a heads up, and then they take on. Now, that is where you have to look at this comment in the chat window, where the person talks about rural education or rural schools. Even today, as we talk 20 months into the pandemic, even today, there are people who do not have access to that technology, that learning, and that teaching. And what is our role as a school leader is to mitigate the massive effect. It starts at home. Charity begins at home. Even in your school, there are people who don't have the luxury of accessing technology through their devices the way the best person or the most gifted child, not in terms of knowledge, the most gifted child in terms of prosperity is accessing. Now, you got to mitigate that effect inside your school. There are people who still do not have access, and you got to mitigate that, because it's important you bring them on one level, one common level. Once you have done that, your priority will be to look at immediate community around you. I mean, look at the beauty of the schools in India. Yes, in US, in the Western world, it is all organized into districts. They say it's a school district, and there is a geographical jurisdiction for every home to send their child to the government or the public school. In India, we may not have that rule that every home should send to the nearest government school or public school, but even our organization is geographically well spread. For every school in the city, there is also a school on the hill. There is also a school in the tribal hinterlands, which means we are quite spread. If each school, especially the private players like us, if we can look at our surrounding areas, And if we can try to mitigate the massive effect by bringing the children onto the technology platform, because it costs you nothing, it is just about your LMS being opened for them, your teaching learning material being used by those teachers, and it doesn't cost you anything. But you are able to mitigate the massive effect. And I think that should be the priority. You may call it CSR, you may call it social responsibility, or I am trying to help somebody, whatever you want to call. You can call it a project, you can call it a community development program, whatever. But that also is priority number 9 for this year 2022. And I think this will be the priority. This should be the priority for many of us going forward, at least for the next 2 to 3 years, because the kind of digital divide we are talking cannot be bridged. Now, I'm not asking you to take care of electricity. I'm not asking you to take care of internet connectivity, but I am asking you to open your doors and windows and minds to allow people to access that program, because many people don't even know to keep a PowerPoint intact, but you have it and you can share that as a knowledge resource. Even telling people these are the links, like how Ms. Preeti said that you go for this particular initiative from the Ministry of Science and Technology that is engaged with science. How many of us knew it? We are 80 people here. Did we all know about it till she shared? At least I did not know. Let me be honest about it. I did not know. I'm in education for the last 20 years. So this is what is a single small step we can take in mitigating the massive effect. That's what I mean when I say priority is sharing of knowledge. Last but not the least priority, that is priority number 10, is examinations and assessments. I think all of us understood that there was no one way to do assessments and examinations when the pandemic hit us, because we were all so proud of our examination systems. But suddenly, you had no choice because children were not coming back, and you had to resort for hoping for the best whenever you rolled out your question paper. Quizzes, gamification, all of them came into your classroom and your assessment consideration set. And I think your priority should be not about examinations and assessment, but in redefining the examinations and assessment. So what if there is an open book exam? So what if there is a project where two people together solve a problem? Can't we assess them? Because it should not be about assessment of learning, it should be assessment for learning. We need to make sure that we assess so that the child is inspired to learn more. And there are multiple methodologies. I am no expert in telling you that this is the best way. There are multiple ways, and I think the boards and the network of schools are sharing a lot of best practices. But I think what we need to focus is we need to keep redefining the assessments and examinations as one of the priorities for this particular year 2022, because the way I see it, with the National Testing Agency coming into picture, with IIT, JEE, and all the other examinations going hybrid and online and other things, I don't see a day where your traditional pen and paper test will be outdated. So we got to be clear that we need to be at the forefront when it comes to redefining the assessments and the exams. Because if you ask any board, any government, any Ministry of Education, they come to the practitioners. They come to us for ideas. But if we wake up then, I think we would have missed the bus. We got to have people thinking, implementing proof of concept so that we can share it when the time is really right. And you don't really have to wait for somebody's approval, because you are the boss in your environment. You take decisions and you can make it happen. So these are 10 top priorities, which I personally feel are important to focus upon in the year 2022. So I will take a pause here. I will go back to Ms. Supriti.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chandrasekhar. I think it's been very, very interesting listening to you and the way you outlined the 10 top priorities and in a beautiful flow. I mean, if you look at it, everything kind of synced into, like, so threaded beautifully. So just going back to your last two priorities, when you mentioned the ninth one, mitigating the tech divide, I really like the idea that charity begins at home. So when we talk about that we give statistics to those many numbers, not having access to technology, or there are learning apps. Instead of looking at what is not being done, I would, as an optimist, I agree with you. I think one should just look at what we have, and if we have something good, share it with others. It does not necessarily mean sharing of internet or the gadgets or things like that. But going back to engage with science, if in fact it was started and it's on DD, it's not just on YouTube, it's a national channel. So it started to so that children in the rural areas can benefit, but somebody has to know about it to get value out of it. So all of what we teach in schools, in our curriculums, all of that is already there. And not just here, there is Disha portal by CBSE. There are so many other such organizations and channels that if you really sit down, if you ask your teachers to find such channels, they would. What I've shared is at a national level. So I like the idea that instead of just looking at what we don't have or what we have not been able to do, why not we do in a better way with what we already have. So sharing of resources, fantastic. I think beautiful reminder to all of us. And the final one, in which you mentioned about learning for assessment, I think it if I am correct in stating that it has been an eye opener for a lot of teachers and school leaders when term one of board came in and the pattern completely changed, and suddenly teachers were feeling jittery that how will the children do it? They've not practiced. So if they've been taught well, keeping this in mind that they have to learn, you put it in any format, children will be able to do it. But if you train them in a certain way for questions to be answered in a certain way because you have to get marks, of course everybody would get jittery. So it's kind of dawned upon a lot of teachers. Some, I wouldn't say all of them have been doing this way, but many have been doing this way. So I think it's kind of a new dawn for them that now they have to think about giving clarity at a conceptual level, giving them teaching them in a way they learn, so that they shouldn't have any problem in any kind of format being presented to them while they are responding to the so-called examination questions or assessments. So I like the 10th one also. In fact, I'm quite I don't know whether IPN has been doing this or not. I'm going to request them, since I've already made my notes, I'll send my notes to them. I think the summary notes, I think wherever we are going to post this in the YouTube or the IPN website, they should also kind of summarize in some bits and pieces. So whoever has missed or would like to kind of keep it as a note checklist in front of them, they can, instead of listening to a 1 hour video, which again would add to their screen time. So I think this is the beautiful top priority checklist that you shared with us. We still have about 20 minutes with us. And with this, I think I would like to open this time to our audience. If they have any questions, we can unmute them. They can raise their hand and we can unmute them. And I'll take up those questions for you to respond to. Or they can mention in the chat box. We'll be very open to taking up for your responses. So dear audience, now is your time. Question, raise your hand. Use the emoji of raising the hand, because we'll be picking up only the ones who will be, yeah. So that's our TMIP, and only with showing off you hands up emoji. So if you have questions, or you may put it down in the chat box. We'll be waiting for your questions.
Yeah, I think it'll be great to have some questions. Dr. Dheeraj Mehrotra.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been talking hard about experiential learning and also on the view of how best we can integrate learning as a priority. With the march of time, I believe what Madam directed, that we need to be very, very particular as how to implement technology in education. And of course, COVID gave us much to learn and also much to lose, particularly on ground. So ma'am, my question to you is that implementing experiential learning in the age of technology, the real life learning is missing. So what's a substitute for that?
That's a question for our keynote speaker, Dr. Chandrasekhar. I can speak, but today he's the honorable keynote speaker. So I think I'll give the platform to him. And you and I can connect on phone, and I'll definitely be very happy to share my report on that. So Dr. Chandrasekhar, would you like to answer?
Yeah, sure. So can you just rephrase the question so that I can take it up?
Well, even NCF talks about, and even NEP talks about implementation of experiential learning. But in the age of technology, this EL is missing as a miss out. So as a school head, even I feel that children should be motivated to impart and get learning, in fact, through the experiential learning projects. So what technology, in what way, like it can help? And ultimately, real-time learning, as I said earlier, also is missing. It's a miss out because we don't have physical connect with the children. And for sure, as ma'am also rightly suggested, that hybrid will continue for a longer period of time. So how to implement and what way can we dwell in order to deliver that?
Well, I think it's a great question, and it causes sincere and serious reflection on the way things are going. So I'll pick up a couple of words from your question. Number one is experiential learning and real-time learning. These are the two key things which stand apart for me, and technology being the third word. Now, look at these things and understand where the situation is right now. Now, we come from the mindset and the kind of experience as educators that experiential learning and real-time learning will basically mean learning by doing. And we want children to kind of, if I have to use the phrase, get their hands dirty, get them into the whole experience of doing it, and they can make mistakes, they can learn by trial and error, and that's how they go on with respect to capturing concepts and ideas. Am I correct so far?
Yes, yes, so
Yeah.
far.
So now your question comes into play here. You say that with technology and with hybrid learning and with this situation, the new normal continuing, how are we going to ensure that? And how are we going to ensure efficiency in experiential learning? So now that's where I want you to take a back seat. I want to step back along with you and let's look at the future. Yes, we are going back, but you are taking a good look at the future. What is a good look at the future? 10, 15, 20, 25 years into the horizon. And when you look at it, we cannot separate technology from real life. Technology is here to impact us and even more the younger generation as they grow up on, because the way they deal with their real life is all digital, and more digital is going to be a part of their life. Now, that is the perspective I want to talk when it comes to experiential learning. Today, we have to understand technology in a broader context. Technology need not be computer. Technology cannot be limited only to the binary. Technology is like, if you go back to the good old days, our piece of chalk and the green board or the blackboard was technology available to us. The best out of waste, the scrap material which was available is the thing which was available, and people were using that to create learning projects and some kind of props and other things. Today all of that is available for students online. I mean, you must have heard of metaverse, you must have heard of this digital space which is coming in, AI, virtual reality. People can put on those ocular glasses and go across the world and feel it. They were not there, but they can feel it in real time. Now, that is the new definition of experiential learning. That is a new definition of real-time learning. They can see. I mean, I was surprised. Last week I read a news article which said a Tamil Nadu couple paid some money to get married on the metaverse, virtual, where their holograms were projected and they got married over there. I mean, people like us, adults, are playing all these games. Imagine what children are doing. Okay, so that means our definition of experiential learning, our definition of real-time learning, our definition of collaboration, all of that is getting disrupted. We need to be clear that that own definition which we had no longer is expansive. We need to expand it to include all these things, and more will come. So I think the answer here is we got to define the objective and seek answers from the new age learners. Ask them how they can use their experience to achieve these objectives. And I'm sure your children will not disappoint you. They will surprise you with the answers because you are focused on giving the objective and they are focused on achieving the objective. This is my personal opinion on your question.
I think that was quite an exhaustive response to Dr. Dheeraj Malhotra's question, and quite a pertinent questions, because I can understand where it is stemming from. At the end of it, with the little ones, with the very young ones, you really can't experiment so much with technology in place. You do need them getting their hands dirty. You do need them to do things and experience the whole process of. We talk about tactile learning. We talk about visual. We talk about kinesthetic. So with the little ones, yes, we have to bring in your design thinking priority in place and think of a solution how we can kind of have a balance with both the experiential, the regular way, and using the technology that is going to be prevalent in much more bigger way. So yeah, these are going to be natives of the metaverse. So if we don't get onto the same platform and understand how they learn and how they would like to learn, I think again there'll be a disconnect and a divide between the educator and the learner sitting in your classroom across, who may not be connected to you at all, even being on the screen. So I think you responded beautifully well, Dr. Chandrasekhar. I saw two hands up. One is St. Francis School. So if we can allow Team IPN, if we can allow this school to ask the question.
Ma'am, I think there is some issue with his audio because I can't see the mic option there, audio option.
Okay, so there is a question in the chat box. We're from BLA principal, Miss Seema. She has mentioned about, she says, so you spoke about rural children. What about specially disabled children? How to connect them in hybrid classes? How to do their assessments? So I would like to answer before I give you the place to
Please
answer.
go ahead. Please go ahead.
Why I'm keen on answering, because this is one area I am very, very strongly and passionately involved in. And why so is because I'm a mother to a specially needs child who is 22 years and has completed her graduation from NIFT. So I think I'm in a good position to answer that. So to answer to Ms. Seema and to everybody else here, please understand they are no different from the regular students. Gone are the times when one refers to them as special needs. You still refer to them as special needs, and you still create separate resources and separate support systems for them, but not at the cost of any kind of isolation. It has to be inclusive. And when we talk about inclusion, it is not about just special needs. It is about everybody. So your rural children with technology gap, your ethnicity, your gender, everything comes into play. So when you think in its entirety about inclusion, there is no way you will think of special needs in a different way. You will not talk about their assessments because you have to first focus on their learning. What have you done as a school to ensure that they are included in their learning with the way that they learn? First, one has to introspect all that. CBSE does not ask you that you have to take an examination. It tells you to train them that they reach a point where they can take the board examination. If that also is a difficult scenario owing to the disability of the child, greater disability of the child, then there are various other options that the child still can sail through the same boards like regular children, but not probably from the school. But there are different other ways of going about it. But one has to sit and write down what you've done as a school for them. And then we raise a question like this, that what about their inclusion, or what about their, I cannot include your special needs. I can include mine. And I can do it more so because I've lived that journey and I'm still living it. So I know what the hardships and what the struggles are. So probably it comes naturally to me now. However, any person who really wants to make a difference into children, or really wants to truly be an inclusive school, including everybody, all you have to do is sit down with a piece of pen and paper and write down what different have you done, what extra steps, what are you doing for these children, or for anybody, to call yourself truly an inclusive school. So now I give it to you, Dr. Chandrasekhar, if you'd like to add anything to the question.
Well, I think you kind of covered it all, and I have nothing more to add, but I just want to make one point. It's not an addition, but it's another point for you to think about, especially Ms. Seema. Now, you look at, especially able children, I will not say disabled children, especially able children, and also people who require that additional attention. See, that is the advantage of technology. That is the advantage of technology. What is the biggest advantage is it is at your own pace. It is on demand. So the advantage is you can actually personalize, you can customize your offering to the students. And that was not happening in your physical classroom, because CBSE says inclusive classrooms. You got to bring them all together, and you have to deal with them the way you would have dealt in a class of 20 or 25. But with technology now, you have breakout rooms. You can talk to them separately. You can engage with them meaningfully, and you can come up with various projects and options for them to get their hands on. I think that is the other advantage in addition to what Ms. Supriti just mentioned.
In fact, if I may just give an example, my daughter was in her third year when this pandemic started in NIFT New Delhi. And before this, she was scoring 8 CGPAs all on her own. Post being online, she starts scoring 9 CGPAs. Why? Because of technology. The Google was translating whatever the professor was. She understands only English. She's hearing impaired. So Google was translating it for her as a subscript, superscript, titles, subtitles, and she could understand the lectures better. So if I look at it, I think she did better because of technology. Sitting at home, taking an online class offered same professors, because whenever they would break out in Hindi, she wouldn't understand. And here she was understanding everything because technology was at play. So you have to, as I said, have to sit down and look at your resources and find ways to ensure that there is complete 100% inclusion in your school for every child who's enrolled with you. Any other questions? I think we have about a few minutes. I can take one more question if we have.
Yeah, ma'am, if we can take the question from chat box if we have. Otherwise, like it is to the all to the audience. If they do not have any question, then we will be closing the session. We'll be calling the day off then. And yeah, I'll also be putting the link, our YouTube channel link, so that they can find all the videos of our previous sessions, and for today's also they will be able to find it there. Over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Chandrasekhar. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of Team IPN for being our keynote speaker today. The top 10 priorities that you quoted here were wonderful. And as I said, I'll request Team IPN to put it down as a little checklist also along with the videos. And we look forward to listening to you more sometime in future. And I think people who have attended our session and who would be watching it in a video or a pre-recorded format would love to have questions. So if they have, they'll write back, and we would really request you that if you could respond if people still have questions besides now. Great.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great pleasure, and it's always amazing to connect with educators and school leaders across. I will put in my email ID on the chat window so that we can keep the conversation going. I will also share the link to the YouTube videos, which I keep posting, because that's my way of connecting with many educators across India. So there are a lot of these sessions which are connected and pertinent to educators, whether it is on excellent online teaching or what is the need of the SEL, all these 10 priorities, little more detail. I would have made some videos, so you can definitely catch up. But yes, I will really look forward to your notes, because talking is one thing, but when you have made a notes and you are going to bring it from your perspective, as Ms. Supriti was talking, that gives me the clarity of how it can be implemented at the ground zero. And I think that is what we are all known for. As educators, we might have the most noblest idea, but what takes the cake is how well can we execute it. And I have no doubts about execution, and I'm absolutely honored and thrilled to be sharing this time with you through the IPN. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Now we will be closing the session, and we'll meet in our next session. Thank you so much.